Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys my Umbral Trinity build. Now, there's not that much of a point in putting this build together because realistically the only huge benefit that you're getting is the increase to your health, but I can kind of make some arguments as to why it might be a good idea on a Eevee build, but not necessarily for a Blessing build, right? Because on a Blessing build, you're kind of modding for like specific scenarios. So let's say, for example, Eidolon hunting, whenever you're making an Umbral build, you're pretty much locking yourself into building in a particular way, right? So just to kind of give you guys an example of what I'm talking about, if we open up my modding section, you can see like this is my Eevee build, right? And usually on an Eevee build, you would use something like Vampire Leech, okay? And this basically gives you overshields, but I opted not to use that because if you're going to be using an Eevee trait in high level content, then you're pretty much going to be getting one shot anyway whenever you get to those like super high levels, and you're going to have to stay within like your Frost Snow Globe or a Limbo Bubble, or constantly be spamming CC type of thing. So I opted for, instead of using Vampire Leech, I opted for Augur Reach, and that basically just increases the range of which my Eevee can cover. So then if my teammates want to wander off a little bit, then they have kind of that leeway, that room to do so. But because of that, I had to throw in a dash polarity instead of a Zenith polarity, right? Which kind of, locks this build in a certain way. And then that negatively also impacts my Blessing build, right? So the Blessing build, I usually use this versus Eidolons, but on my regular Blessing build, if we go ahead and take a look at that, I have Handspring on. And a few players, especially speedrunning groups, they like to use like an enemy detector mod, so basically a mod that detects enemies to sort of bring the enemy in closer to the squad a little bit faster, so then that way, you can charge the lures faster and stuff like that, because practically whenever you can see the enemy in the minimap, if you have that loot detector mod, you can go over to them and then you can bring them over to your lures and yada yada yada. So it's just basically knowing where the enemy is, bringing them close to the lures, charging the lures, and getting that all done faster and stuff like that. So that's why maybe running this build isn't necessarily the best idea, but if you're mainly an Eevee player, then I would recommend going ahead and putting this together, because realistically on the Eevee build, there's no downsides apart from this one mod right here. So you either use Vampire Leech or you use Augur Reach or whatever else you want to throw on here. So you could throw on Augur Secrets for more strength. You have more strength on every single Eevee cast. So you get more energy per pulse type of thing. That's completely doable as well, but because like you're getting so much energy anyway, I just opted for Augur Reach because you have that buff from your Umbral Intensify and stuff like that. So I just figured that, hey, having Augur Reach on here might be a better idea. So yeah, Trinity, like, contrary to popular belief, she's not just like a support frame, right? Whenever you go into like super high level content, like maybe like a wave 100 defense or something, which we actually tried yesterday, we died on wave 97, which is a big unfortunate, but your Trinity is super important because your Trinity also kind of doubles as a damage dealer whenever you get into that higher level content, because her damage scales on her Energy Vampire. And you're going to see that whenever we go ahead and we vamp this Corrupted Heavy Gunner over here. So he's level 155 and he's got a buttload of armor. But if we vamp him, look how much of his health goes away. That's half his health gone in one Eevee. And that's because we have a buttload of power strength, and it's just because of how Eevee works. So it takes like percentage of their health, and that keeps on scaling. So the higher level the enemy is, the more damage Eevee is going to do. So if you're staying long enough, your Eevee should, at some point eventually take over your DPS frame, right? So your DPS frame is going to be doing something like slash procking them or viral procking them to reduce their health even further, and then your Trinity is basically going to become the damage dealer at some point. So it's really, really, really important to have a good Eevee build in your squad if you are going to be doing an endurance run, because of that reason in particular, and also like the energy and the blessing, right? So as an Eevee player, I see a lot of people just kind of standing still on top of the pod and just like pressing 2 while looking at the door. Like if you're playing Auric in defense, like people just stand still and they press 2 while looking at the door, and they're maybe EVing like 1 out of every like wave of enemies, or maybe we'll be nice, we'll say they're vamping 5 out of every single wave, which is not that good because they're just AFK spamming 2, when in reality, whenever it comes to playing Eevee Trin, what you should be doing, we're just going to go ahead and unpause the AI, you simulate all the bad guys. Okay, we should probably spawn in one more, not one more, but a few more. 1 dirt per video. Okay, heavy gunners. Here we go. Select all. Simulate. What you should be doing is you should constantly spamming your 2 on every single enemy that you see, and then pressing your 4 pretty much every time you have the opportunity. So you should be a extremely active Trinity player, just vamping and blessing every single time you get the opportunity. And also, like, let's say you have a DPS Saren in your squad, right? What you could do is you could use your 1 to go ahead and suspend an enemy in the air, so that Saren player can get their damage from their spores up a lot more efficiently. So if you keep on spamming your 1 on an enemy, keeping them in the air, and then you let your Saren player cast your 1 on that enemy, and then just keep on popping their spores, then they're going to have like a lot of damage built up over time, and that damage is just going to murder like pretty much every single enemy. Because keep in mind, that's I think spores, yeah, spores is not a corrosive proc, so if any enemy did happen to have spores, let's say you're not, or not spores, sorry, any enemy happen to have armor, because you're not running 4 times corrosive projection, you have spores on, then having those spores spread as much as possible is really, really, really good. So, you know, you can use those frames in conjunction with one another. Of course, that might make a little bit more sense on something like a blessing build, right? So in a blessing build, you're able to hold up one enemy in the air for really long, depending on your power strength, right? So if we just go ahead and get close to this guy, like so, he's going to stay in there for 33 seconds, and then you can get your Saren player to come in here, cast your spores, and constantly keep on popping it off this enemy right here. Well, if you need to, you just cast it on this guy, and then it just keeps on spreading, you know, because the spores are going to stay. He's basically going to be infected for like the majority of the cast of your Well of Life, right? So that is basically that. But back to the actual point of the video. Eevee is extremely powerful, and you're going to be getting more health from this build. That's kind of like the main selling point. You're getting more health, and you're also getting more energy per tick on your Eevee, which is really awesome as well, which just makes it like all around a really powerful build. Plus you also get that damage, but that's more because of how Eevee works opposed to like how you're building, right? So then if we move on to your Blessing Trin. Now the Blessing Trin is the build that I want to say you're going to want to be modding more specifically for. So if you're building for, let's say for example, the Eevee Trin, you're going to mess up your Blessing build. And if you're building for your Blessing build, if you want an Umbral Blessing build, you're going to mess up your Eevee Trin. Well, yeah, you're going to mess up your Eevee Trin unless you can find an Xless mod that you're okay, that has a dash running. So like Rush maybe, for example, I don't know. But basically the downside here is, right, I have to use Endurance Drift. Usually in an Eidolon hunt, I would want to be using something like maybe, for example, Handspring. So if I get knocked over on the Gunchulus fight, you know, I can spring up faster, or a mod that detects the enemies and brings them over faster. I forget what enemy radar. So Stealth Drift, something that does basically the same thing. So you want to be modding this here for a dash polarity rather than a Xeneric. And the reason I have a Xeneric on it is because I wanted to run that Power Drift on there. So you could make the argument that I could drop the Power Drift and then just go ahead and throw on a dash, and then, you know, throw on something like anything that has a dash in here. So Enemy Sense, Coaction Drift, yada yada yada. Basically just anything that has a dash would be applicable to throw on there. But, you know, it's kind of down to you. So it really is, what type of build do you want to run? Do you want to kind of specialize in your Blessing build? Do you want to specialize in your Vampire build? Or what do you want to do? What type of Trinity player do you want to be? Personally, I prefer the Eevee Trin build because I see more uses for that. And then if I did want to do Eidolons, I would just go back to my regular Trinity. However, that extra health on the Eidolon Hunter, the Blessing build, would be super nice as well, right? So if you wanted to, you can make another Trinity. You can make an Umbral Blessing build Trinity, which would allow you to hunt more Eidolons more efficiently. You'd have more health, which means you wouldn't die as much. But you could make the argument as well, like, as a Trinity player, should you really be dying? You know, should you really be dying because you have 75% damage reduction and an ability that instantly heals you and stuff like that? So it's really down to you. But like I said, that enemy radar is very helpful in especially speedrun groups for Eidolon hunts, because it shows you where the enemy is. You can bring the and whenever I say enemy, I mean the little Vomulus. You can bring the Vomulus near the lure a lot faster if you know where they are, and I believe there's also a mechanic where, like, if you can see them on the map, then they're going to come towards you faster as well, type of thing. So it just makes it a lot easier whenever you can see where the Vomulus are, and they can just kind of come towards your lures, and you can get those lures charged a lot faster. So it's mainly for speedrunning groups. So I don't know, it's really down to you. Is it worth the forma is a question that you have to ask yourself. You know, like, that's something that you can answer. As an endgame player, I have a bunch of forma, a bunch of platinum, so I can just make these builds whenever and however I want. So, you know, that's why I'm making this video. But that's the question you have to ask yourself whenever it comes to these Umbral builds. Is it really worth my my forma and stuff like that? If you have it laying around, I say go for it, because you're going to have some of the best builds out there, because having more power strength and more health is definitely, in my opinion at least, worth it, because it's just going to make more content a lot easier. But you could also make the argument that, hey, versus high level content, you're going to get one shot, but it really depends. What type of content are you playing? What type of content do you specialize in? What do you want to farm here and now, type of thing? And what do you see yourself doing in the future? Those are the questions that you have to ask yourself whenever it comes to these Umbral builds. So let me know what you guys think of this Umbral build in the comment section below, because I think that the Eevee build is dope, because the amount of damage that you get off, like, I've always been a fan of Eevee Trinity. She's been a staple in, like, endurance groups for the longest time, and, like, hour-long survivals. Well, hour-long survivals is pretty easy, but, like, 3 hour-long survivals, wave 100 defense, stuff like that, Eevee Trinity is pretty much essential. Like, you don't want to go in without it, because, like I said, she's gonna overtake your damage dealer. Like, she's 110% needed, and if you don't have this, not this exact build, but a build that has high power strength and negative duration, if you don't have that, then you're hurting your entire team. You know, that's just, it goes without saying. Blessed build, Eidolon hunts, that's all I really use it for. Maybe I'd use it for shits and giggles outside of that, but, you know, this is a build that you use for Eidolon hunts, but you could change this here to a enemy radar or handspring or whatever Exil's mod kind of tickles your pickle, you know? So it's really up to you. And that's something that I need to stress with these builds. But anyway, guys, I'm not going to waste your time anymore. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button below. And if you'll see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.